first CEAUP conference from the academic year 2021-2022. Today we have with us Dr. Kayan Lam. She's a research fellow at the Center for International Studies from the ISCTE for Lisbon University. So before she did the PhD in African Studies and also the master degree in African Studies, and she's interested in political science, social anthropology, and also translation. Her last research project examined the development of island economies and regional dynamics in sub-Saharan Africa. Today she's talking with us from Macau. So thanks, Kayan, for taking the time to talk with us with this time difference. So it's good night for Kayan now. So without further delay, I will pass the word to Kayan, and she will talk with us the conference. So portrayal of sub-Saharan Africa and Island of individual, female and family contribution to the SDGs, to the Sustainable Development Goals, analysis of social media posts of the Food and Agriculture Organization. So Kayan is bringing to us a very innovative and approach to research. So she will talk with us issues around social media. So Kayan, the floor is yours. Thanks for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you. Now I'll share screen. So wait a bit. Can you see the slides?
Yes, everything is okay. You can start.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. It's not very late in my city. We are now, it's 10 o'clock only. Thank you for the invitation. It is always a pleasure to meet a cohort of bright and aspiring students from all over the world. Congratulations on the second edition of the European Interdisciplinary Master in African Studies. Some years ago, when I decided to enroll in a master's program, I had to choose one university, just one university. Now you have 3 universities at your disposal. So lucky you. In the marketplace, we would say this is a real bargain. In academia, we might say this is the future of university education, which is open, multidisciplinary, competitive, international, and socially engaged. I took some time to read your profiles and expectations in the AMA's social media posts on Facebook and on LinkedIn, and they are solid, forward-looking, and very positive. To tell the truth, you have much more to teach me. So next time, maybe the conferences should be focused on the students. The students should give conferences. That way, we can save a lot of money. The universities save a lot of money. But then the students have a lot to teach us. That's the thing that I want to say. Please know that we have been following your progress. We hope to see you achieve even more as students, professionals, scholars, and citizens of the world. The following study looks at the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, in short, UNFAO, and the Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs. In an analysis of social media posts of the UNFAO, the study highlights the portrayal of sub-Saharan Africa, which I would call SSA, and the signaling of individual, female, and family contributions to SDGs. The working materials are the text, photos, and videos transmitted in official posts on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. The theories and literature review, my study draws on a completed PhD research project on food, culture, and society in Portuguese-speaking Africa. What is your interpretation of this photo of a smiling boy? Were he and his friends with the Zero Hunger generation? The second SDG goal is to end hunger. This goal is divided into smaller targets. In order to achieve zero hunger, we need to guarantee access to quality and nutritious food. There are also challenges of social justice, challenges of coming up with ways to boost productivity and technology, and challenges of international cooperation. The UN FAO falls under this last challenge. International cooperation. The contributions of international organizations to solving world problems. Globally, the SDGs are the blueprints for addressing shared problems, including those related to poverty, inequality, climate, environmental degradation, prosperity, peace, and justice. The unlucky thing is, in 2019, the UN admits that for the present, the world is off track to meet most of the targets. Normally, when people ask us how we are doing, we say we're doing well.
Was also treated in hospital for injuries. And this is where the events took place. The location set for...
Sorry, I'll continue. Normally, when people ask us how we are doing, we say we're doing well, everything is fine. Well, when we envision the future, we hope that we are on the right path, that we are on track to achieve great things. The UN is very honest. We are not on track to meet the SDGs. In reality, the world is off track to meet most of the targets. The world is not on track to achieve zero hunger by 2030. FAO is one of the big five. Some may know the big five of accounting. There are many young women here. Did some of you study bookkeeping or accounting? As a child, perhaps you grew up hearing parents and teachers say, if you study commerce and accounting, you need to work hard in order to enter one of the big five accounting firms. How about food and agriculture? The big five of global food and agricultural institutions are the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, which is the one we are discussing today, Agriculture and Rural Development Department of the World Bank, International Fund for Agricultural Development, United Nations World Food Programme, Consultative Group on International Agricultural Research. These are the big five. From ending poverty and hunger to responding to climate change and sustaining our natural resources, food and agriculture lies at the heart of the 2030 agenda and is also the central concern of the FAO. Nutrition mediates man's relationship with the environment in important ways. Famine and crisis mismanagement are major African studies research topics. In its simplest form, food security means that all people have enough to eat at all times to be healthy and active, and do not have to fear that the situation will change in the future. The concept can be applied at global, national, household, and individual levels. Famine is the worst manifestation of food insecurity. While the concept of food security has been around since the 1970s and never went out of fashion, its contextual meanings evolve, and the way we think about food swings back and forth like a pendulum. Academically, there is also a competition between the production perspective and the consumption perspective on food security. It was once simply a food debate. Then it became a livelihood debate. Much more recently, it became a sustainability debate. For good or for bad, the international community has always played an important role in fighting hunger, or according to the FAO, creating a zero hunger world. The FAO is a specialized agency of the UN that leads international efforts to defeat hunger. Now, when you look at these terms, famine, hunger, nutrition, diet, cuisine, food security, food sovereignty, rights to food, etc., these words are not politically neutral. Some 50 years ago, we talked of famine. Now we're more concerned with food security issues. Half a century ago, anthropologists published field notes and sketches of nutrition and diet in colonized territories. But now we have world cuisines and world gastronomy. The way we conceptualize reality has changed, and so the words we use to describe our visions for the future have also changed. What I want to say is that international institutions play an important role in problem definition and agenda setting. How about these? How do you interpret the female figures along with the statistics? Women make up 40% of the agricultural labor force in developing countries, and many of them live in rural areas. The FAO also informs us that 80% of the world's food is produced by family farmers. Over 90% of all farms in the world are family run, and so involving them would be of vital importance for a zero hunger future. Let us put these numbers in context. SSA remains the region with the highest prevalence of hunger. In the past decade, over 20% of the population in SSA have had to fight hunger on a daily basis, and the percentage is rising every year. Drought and economic uncertainties are some of the factors behind recent increase in undernourishment in SSA. Since 2020, we have had to account for the drastic consequences of mismanagement of the coronavirus outbreaks. Despite the efforts of the Big Five to combat hunger, there were hundreds of millions of people suffering. Because of these circumstances, some researchers say, I quote, Africa is the only region in the world becoming less and less able to feed itself, end of quote. If we were to live a world in which everyone had access to nutritious food, we would achieve total happiness. But then, if we were to achieve zero hunger in 2030, that is, if you do the math, 10 years from now, we would have to be living in a totally different world. This should not be a surprise for the people present here. Many of you know the problems firsthand, and you understand very well the challenges faced by Africans, not just in rural areas, but also in urban areas, that is, in cities. The challenges in cities are also enormous and complex. For students registered in this master's program, in the third semester in Bordeaux, you will meet French professors who will be able to discuss these city challenges that affect Africans in greater detail. For today's meeting, 3 readings were recommended, including an article published in the prestigious Journal of Peasant Studies, an article written by Pritchard Bill et al. Those who read it, did you like the article? It is a very well-written article, a good reminder to us that no study is perfect. The facet of a reality that is revealed depends on the line of inquiry that is followed. To give an example, to study social movements for food sovereignty. Social movements are the concern. Food sovereignty is the concept. Social movements surround food sovereignty. That is, a concern envelopes the concept. That is what you see on the left-hand side on the slide. When we study social movements for food sovereignty, we're investigating a concern that has a concept at its core. Besides, we have bigger concepts, smaller and connected concepts. To illustrate this, there is the concept of rights to food. The concept premises on human rights are much larger concept. The concept of rights to food is also connected to public health and sustainable development and similar concepts. Now we see that concepts are interconnected. How does this relate to our present discussion? You may ask. As I follow a particular line of inquiry about the UN FAO, some facets of the institution's action are brought to light, and others fall by the wayside. As a large organization, the FAO structures its work around many concepts and visions. The FAO also collaborates with other organizations and counts on the support of its member countries. The FAO has more than 190 members right now. Being conscious of what we are doing, of the implications of our scholarly choices is of vital importance. For a long time, for researchers, food meant agricultural products. Food is just commodities, meaning researchers thought they were studying something that was exchangeable for money. They investigated the economic worth of money, economic worth of food. Imagine 10 tons of potatoes, 20 carts of carrots, 30 warehouses of maize selling for their respective economic worth. Not very interesting, is it? After many decades of debate, we now know much more about food. It is not just a valuable good. Food does not only have economic value, but it also possesses social and cultural values. Food is closely connected with our lives. Food is sold in the market, but it is grown in the field. Researchers now recognize that undertaking field work generates qualitative data that complement and explain statistics. While having concepts does not lead to full understanding, no research is possible without conceptual work. And so, I structure my research around the following understanding. The local is constituted by and constitutive of the global. To tackle social problems, we need to reconcile world and community aspirations, economic and cultural interests. The local is constituted by and constitutive of the global. This is the main sentence, the essential thing. The SDGs were adopted by over 190 countries in the world. From goals to targets to national actions, a process of localization of public policy takes place. While most SSA countries have little to no influence in the definition and design of the SDGs, they actually decide the level of success of the SDGs on the ground. They hold the key to problem resolution. They must take ownership of the SDGs, hence the importance of reconciling world and community aspirations. Here, let me borrow Professor Dominique Sarpon's ideas about politics and policy. In the French language, politics and policy share the same word. In French, they are politique. In English, we have two words, politics and policy. For things to work, we need to consider both politics and policy. There will be an example of this. Maize is dear to SSA, which consumes 21% of the crop produced globally. In this slide, we have a photo depicting farm workers carrying harvested maize back to the village for processing. The photo was taken in Mozambique, which is a Portuguese-speaking African country. It was one of the winning entries. In 2012, it was chosen by citizens to feature as cover for the FAO. Imagine that in an SSA country, the politicians tell people to change their diet. So they go out on the street and tell the people, now, today you need to change your diet. You cannot eat the same food that you're eating. The politicians tell people to vary the food they eat regularly. But then at the same time, the country has a policy to subsidize maize meal to make it more affordable for poor families. Those of you who read the recommended BBC article about why Africa should stop eating one of its favorite foods will know how difficult it is to reconcile politics and policy. I see that not everyone here can claim an African country as their home. Reading news may help you to find interesting research topics. News articles are never as detailed, precise, or critical as research publications. The news articles are most up to date. News articles are good sources to start with. The BBC articles some of you may have read talks about Zambia. Zambians are urged to vary the maize-based meals with more millet, sorghum, cassava, and sweet potatoes. Zambians are told to avoid eating maize meal 2 or 3 times a day. The government alleges that excessive consumption of maize is not healthy, it's not sustainable. Supposedly, there are more sustainable plants that Zambians can invest in. The government says that maize is not healthy because it is highly processed. It is insufficient for good skin and hair. It does not supply nutrients to the brain, so no. In rural Zambia, villagers rarely eat other food, which is a reason for the food insecurity problem in Zambia and the widespread stunted growth of Zambians' children. Ironically, the government is not innocent. It has been subsidizing maize meal, making it popular in poor families. On the African continent, every nation claims its staple food culturally. It is uncertain how these people will make the cultural turn. In this example, we have a long existing policy that contradicts current politics. We also have cultural politics that does not easily reconcile with rational choices. Now, these should be similar terms for some of you in the cohort, in the class. Do you know some of these expressions? Some of you may actually know these words very well. Certainly, some of you will have knowledge of some of the terms. Perhaps you will call maize in your own way. These words all mean maize or maize meal or corn. Human beings give names to animals, to plants, to things. You all have a name. Your friends have their names. Domestic animals have names. We know how to distinguish a cow from a sheep, from a goat, from a horse, from a donkey. We can tell between edible mushrooms from non-edible mushrooms. For everything important to us, we derive ways to recognize them. Naming is a signifying act. Naming endows the object with meaning. Naming also allows humans to remember better. Hence, we do not easily forget. Hence, we do not easily let go. Anthropologists have long studied the culture of agriculture. Agriculture is a deeply cultural activity. Let's take the example of rice planting in Guinea-Bissau, which is another Portuguese-speaking African country. The Jola villagers believe that planting rice is proper work. I repeat, planting rice is proper work. It is what work should be, regardless of the yield. For the present, many of us eat rice regularly. Rice is a staple in many countries. Rice is no longer strange to us. In some parts of Africa, in our grandparents' generation, rice is Christmas food. Good rice was only eaten in the most important celebration of the year. Most of us here now, at this moment, are only consumers. How often do we think about the old-fashioned family farmers? How do we understand the stubbornness, if ever they are really stubborn or not? Returning to example of rice planting in Jola communities in Guinea-Bissau. Rice planting structures Jola social relations. Rice planting gives a sense of belongingness, a sense of self-worth to the villagers. Unfortunately, many are pressured to change the planting cashew, a cash crop. When rice is replaced with cashew, when rice is substituted by cashew, a profitable business, an economic problem may be relieved. So one economic problem is off our list of problems. We have one problem next, but then the cultural challenge starts to take shape. Some years from now, we will have a cultural challenge, because when we force people to change something that is central to their social lives, we are forcing people to change their lives and their habits, their thinking totally, entirely. In this photo, there are two women measuring grain. It won Medicine's support and was cover photo of the FAO in 2013. Politics is engaging and mobilizing people. Besides the necessity of feeding and nourishment, we also need to enable psychological, social, and cultural changes. To tackle social problems, we need to reconcile economic and cultural interests. That is to say, in order for any UN proposal to work, it has to make economic sense, but it also has to make cultural sense. Otherwise, politicians will have little incentive to act, and citizens will have low willingness to cooperate. Africa is the youngest continent. It has some of the highest unemployment rates for young people. This is a fact. The FAO calculates youth density on agricultural land. The rural youth per 1,000 hectares of agricultural land is a close approximation of the labor absorption capacity of agricultural and rural areas. When the youth population dividend of a country is absorbed by adequate development momentum, it means that the national economy grows at a rate that keeps young people employed and occupied. On the contrary, when the national economy grows too slowly, the development momentum is not able to absorb the youth dividend. Young people are unemployed and underemployed. Looking at this image of a young woman and many other similar posters on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, the FAO does not throw the hard facts on us, but it tries to captivate us by involving us in a dialogue, in communication. From the words and photos of FAO, we notice several things. Food and agriculture challenges are presented as general challenges. So the FAO tells us that we all have food and agricultural challenges, and these challenges affect us all. That is, they concern us all, wherever we live or work. The FAO knows how to make the best of colors. More women are featured than men. More people from developing countries or from the global south are featured. The FAO takes advantage of diversity, but the FAO does not overstep diversity. Diversity is acknowledged, but not overstressed. The FAO posts contain clear messages, slogans, or questions. These evoke a sense of individual, familial, and community connection. By portraying SSA in a positive light and signaling the importance of individual, female, and family contributions towards the successful implementation of the SDGs, the FAO varies its approach to food and agriculture issues and adds social media influence to its basket of political tools. Just like any other international organizations, the FAO produces numerous lengthy reports, but it chooses not to share these reports in its social media posts. Just like all administrations, the FAO could adopt dense, jargon-heavy government speak. So I don't know if you've ever heard the term government speak, hyphenated. but it does not, the FAO does not talk like that in its social media posts. For large institutions, it is common to take pictures of high-ranking managers and quote their speeches in social media posts. But as we can verify, FAO features common people in ordinary settings, fulfilling everyday tasks. Recently, I was invited to teach master's courses at the Institute for Tourism Studies in Macau. The Institute for Tourism Studies is a public tertiary education institution in Macau, which is looking for qualified lecturers to teach food issues, to teach master's students how to understand famine and other contemporary challenges and context. Dear colleagues, so you see, what we are talking about today is of world relevance. It is not just an African niche topic. Never believe people who say African studies are only for Africans who cannot make it elsewhere. This is not true. There are many world challenges that require solutions. The world welcomes African insights. My grandparents used to say this to me: when you do mathematics, you should always go for the most difficult problems.
Cindy, let me just interrupt you to tell you that we are short of time. You have to go a little faster, okay?
Yes, I'm already concluding. Thank you for the reminder. So I was saying, my grandparents used to say to me, when you do mathematics, you should always go for the most difficult problems. Because if you can solve the most difficult math problems, you can certainly tackle the easy ones. Interesting, isn't it? Coming to the end, I hope this sharing of mine did two things. One, greater awareness of global issues and world dynamics. Two, better knowledge of research approaches and how they determine the facets of realities we might uncover. Some of you here may become important community leaders, youth entrepreneurs, or political aspirants, or maybe you already are. You will wish to be guided by high alertness of what is happening in the world. Actions should be guided by knowledge, but then we should have the humility to admit that we will never know it all, that no one has access to full knowledge. This is why we're here, because every person counts. All our lived experience counts. Thank you.
Thank you so much, KN, for your presentation. Now we will open the floor to the room or to the participants if someone have questions. Maybe I'll start with a very quick question and then we'll pass to the room. So it's a general question for you. Why you decide to have this particular look to social media? Why you focus on social media to analyze this phenomenon of food, agriculture, and why that? So this a general question, and then I'll pass to the floor to Maciel and to the students and to the other people that are here on Zoom, that if they want to make a question, they are very welcome.
Thank you for the question. My answer is simple. I just found them very interesting. I'm young and I have Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn accounts. So I found the FAO posts fascinating. Why are they so different from the posts of other important institutions? I was captivated and I wanted to know why they approached important issues that way. Because we're not talking about successes. As I explained in my presentation, we are failing. As a group, we are failing. We're not meeting our goals, and we will not be meeting the 2030 agenda 10 years from now. But then why do we find smiling faces in most of the posts, the social media posts of the FAO? What are the messages that the FAO is trying to transmit? That's why I decided to work on it a bit academically.
Thank you. So, does anyone have a question for Kayan?
Could I just can you see here? Just yeah, because I think it's easier. I don't believe too much in this microphone. It has not worked very well in previous sessions. So
I just need to understand. Oh, that's okay. I need to understand in relation to social media as well, but I'm seeing social movements. I guess this is to mobilize people to respond to food security. And the intention would be to look at the policymakers, but as well, my concern would be, how would you mobilize the rural people? Because the major target would be, how would we ensure that the rural people have access to food? So I don't know how we can handle that, coming to issues of food. I don't know whether she gets me in that point. Hello?
Yes, thank you for your question. I understood your concern very well. It's true.
Yeah.
I think we're not only talking about access, internet access. We're talking about simple things: access to water, access to electricity. If rural family cannot afford to have electricity 24 hours, it's not going to pay for internet. It's not going to visit the sites of the FAO and check out what are the best photos featuring the FAO's cover. No, it's not going to happen. And you're very right to mention social movement. Without social movement, most of the goals that are being aimed for will not be met. In one of my slides, you see two circles and smaller circles within two big circles. One is concept, the other is concern. All social movements are based on something. For example, a social movement can be based on improving the livelihoods of rural communities. A social movement can be based on guaranteeing supply of food to school children, etc., etc. So, so you're right to distinguish social movements from social posts, social media posts, because somebody has to act. We can have all the theories, we can gather all the beautiful concepts and publish. But then if we do not implement our great plans, nothing happens. And even if we go for implementation, again, we have the problem of politics and policy. This is, again, one of my slides. You can have a very good policy that does not reconcile with the politics. It can be cultural politics or other forms of other difficulties of mobilization of social forces. It's very difficult to gather people. It's very difficult to mobilize people when there is low level of trust. According to a lot of researchers, the level of trust in the political system in many countries in SSA is frighteningly low. This is one problem we have to tackle. So social movements come in because, well, I cannot say that there is a clear cause and effect, but perhaps I can say there is a correlation. Social movements and the civic society are doing something to complement or to fill in a hole when things are not solved formally and politically, democratically, then people come up with alternatives. This is one way to understand social movement. But then I think I'm derailing. I'm talking off topic. But thank you for raising the concerns. Very relevant point.
Anyone else? So, are we closing the session? Or?
No. Agostinho is here.
Ah.
Tem que ativar o som.
Yes, if I may jump on the first question made by Professor Rui da Silva, concerning on the social network being as a main methodological tools in order to get the information on food hunger on a continent where, for example, not all the population have the access to the internet. The internet rate, I mean, the internet rate in Africa is much lower than for example, in China or even in Europe. So I don't know if from that point of view, you can draw a precise picture on the liability of the information that you are giving to us. But anyway, I have some questions also to present to you. For example, have you ever been to Africa? I mean, have you ever been on the ground in Africa to do the research, so that you can somehow, you know, draw a clear line between the social media information and the reality on the ground? And the second question is, which part of Africa are you talking about? Because Africa is a very large and complex continent. You know, we are 1.3 or 4 billion people. So which part of Africa are you talking about? And as well, what is the percentage of the African people who are at hunger risk or who are suffering the famine on the continent? And how can you draw a comparative line with other parts of the world? Because hunger is not an African problem. You know, you have hunger everywhere. In Europe, you have people who are also suffering hunger. If you go to the East Europe, you will have even a worse picture of people in hunger than in Africa. So can you please draw a comparative picture between what you are talking about Africa and other parts of the world when it comes to the hunger? And the final question is hunger in itself a problem, or it is an effect of a fragile or of a bad public policy? For example, there are countries in our continent, and I don't want to speak about my own country, where they are, you know, established monopolies who do not incentivize the local production. They rather prefer to import food rather than to produce locally. And that, in my point of view, hamper not just the agricultural production on the continent, but also some sort of, people going through hunger, because when they produce, they can't even sell, or sell what they have produced to the many consuming markets in the big cities. So is hunger a problem in itself, or it is a reflex? Or it is a reflection of a bad policy, which can be connected to the big importing enterprises that want to import more than produce in the on the ground. So for now, I can stay here. Thank you for your attention.
Before you go, Sidi, we have about 15-20 minutes to really finish. So I would like that you have more or less a short answer, just to let know if anyone else has a question, and to allow us to finish this in a sort of harmony, not just cutting off. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. These are excellent questions. It's always good to receive good questions, because that way we learn a lot more. I won't be able to answer all of them. I'll just say the following. You're very right in pointing out that there is a difference between reality and portrayal of reality. Now, my presentation is research on the portrayals of the FAO of the SSA. So as we can say, depending on how the FAO is trying to present certain problems, we get to see the portrayals that the FAO transmits to us. Concerning field work, that's fundamental. No one enrolled in a course of African studies will be able to graduate without field work. And you're right, I never did field work on the continent. When we talk about field work, we have to respect a series of rules. I cannot say that because I traveled there, I know Africa. This is not possible. And a lot of experienced Africanists would say that despite trying to understand Africa, despite living in Africa for decades, they do not understand Africa. They cannot grasp Africa totally. And I, as a young scholar that is only starting, I cannot say that I've done field work in all of Africa. I've only done field work in Cape Verde. Then you will say, Cape Verde is an archipelago. Excellent. It is an archipelago. So why did I choose Cape Verde? Cape Verde is the only Portuguese-speaking African country that graduated from a low-income country to a lower middle-income country through policy-induced works. That is, it was not petroleum, it was not natural gas that caused Cape Verde to improve. It was policy. And the major scholars that study famine highlighted Cape Verde as a success story. We're not talking about that report of the African Development Bank that labeled Cape Verde the success story. We're talking about real policy impacts that made a difference. Again, we look at policy and politics. You mentioned a lot of relevant points, and I think I have a lot more to learn from you. I believe that most of you here have a particular way of viewing Africa that is valuable, that is irreplaceable. And I do not totally agree with researchers who say that people who are within are blinded. I do not believe in this. People who are within understand the problems, and you determine the success of Africa, success or failure. You are the ones who should be teaching the world. Famine is a major topic. And when you say that famine could be instrumentalized by politicians, well, that's very true. We have good examples. In Russia, in the Soviet Union, it happened. When famine is instrumentalized for goals that do not benefit the nation, that's the worst that can happen. And we do not hope to see more instrumentalization of famine in Africa. That's why we need politics that go hand in hand with good policy. Thank you.
So, next round.
Hello, I have a question. You said that your research was based on the portrayal of the UNFAO of the hunger in Africa, and you said that, despite that, the reality, or the UN says that we are off track achieving the goals of the SDGs. The UNFAO posts pictures with smiles. So what have you concluded through your research? Is the UNFAO tries to distort reality, or it is trying to give hope that maybe it's achievable? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. I think most of us would say that we have to be positive. Positivism is the first step to success. And if we go back to one of the slides, concept and concern. For the FAO, in order to succeed, everyone has to be involved. And on social media posts, the strategy of the FAO is to draw people, to draw young people, to draw women to its causes. That's why we have at the core of a circle the involvement of the biggest group, the biggest possible group of people. Then we have a bigger circle as social impact, social media influence. That's why we see smiling faces. That's why we see posts that ask questions. That's why the FAO uses languages of young people. That's why there is no government speak in most of the posts. One of the possible explanations, but there are more. If we have to go theoretical, we can go deeper down. If you're interested, you can go for, let me see. I don't know if the PowerPoint will be given to the students, but in the bibliography, you'll find some of the best researchers who can explain the topic much better than I do. The point is, there is always a motive. The FAO is trying to achieve something. Yeah.
Anyone else?
Easy. So
Yes.
Sorry, we have the last question because of the time. Okay. Yeah. You can go.
Hello, I'm Abdi, and my question is: in your presentation, you said that we have already failed in realizing food security and sustainable agriculture as the UN sets the global agenda 2030 30. But my question is, isn't that too early, since we have still 8 more years to work on that? Maybe I'm thinking like we had only maybe seven years that we were working on the agenda, but isn't there still some hope? Yeah, that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for correcting me. I was trying to say the specific goal to achieve zero hunger will not be met in most SSA countries, but the other goals are still achievable. The unfortunate thing is the FAO said that it's not, most countries will not meet the number 2 goal, which is to end hunger by 2030 before coronavirus. With the complications of coronavirus, by our estimations, it will be even more difficult, even more challenging to achieve the second goal, to end hunger. But of course, even if we're not going to achieve zero hunger, we have to work on it because it's a world problem. And you're very right. For every country, if they abide by the SDGs, they localize the goals, they localize the targets. So each country take ownership of the SDGs. They work on it nationally. They work on it in their own ways. So by the end, everyone hands in a report. Only by 2030 will we be able to say for sure how we have done. Yeah, and you're right. I have to be very precise. We're not. That's not the end of the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Kayan. No. We are on. We need to be on time because we start a little late. So, Kayan, thank you so much to take the time to talk with us. It was a real pleasure listening to your research and to your insights around social media posts and the how FAO presents hunger and all the issues to talk about. And also, I think it was very relevant, the focus you put on politics and policy. And this example you gave when you were answering your question to Agostinho was very relevant, because the Cape Verde is a great example of success. And the issues are always around on policy and politics also, but also on policy. So thanks so much. Just a note to the students: the issues around research on social media is a topic that we are on the center are exploring. So if someone from the group want to explore something around research and social media, you are welcome to contact me. And I'm sure that Kayan also will be available if you guys want to contact her for more questions. So thank you so much, and see you in the next CEAUP conference. It is next week at 11 o'clock, sorry. So thank you so much, and bye-bye.